Hope you're all doing good. And with me today is someone who probably requires no introduction. But let's say hello to the people in the chat first. So, hi Charlene, hi Stephen, and hi Cross. And there's DM Scotty as well. Hi DM Scotty. How are you, sir? It's great to meet
I'm
you.
great. I'm great. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Karl.
It's a pleasure. I mean, hi Mia. Thinking about it, I think you've inspired or helped thousands of people to get started with crafting now, whether it's directly or indirectly. So it's your 10th year on YouTube, if I'm not mistaken, yeah?
Right. Yeah. Um, I love the fact that that I've gotten so many people started because um, I think crafting is so great because we don't make things anymore in our society. Like you're expected to just buy everything, right? Like we make it for you, you buy it. But there's something in people that they want to make things. It's fun to make things. Um, it touches a certain side of people to actually create something and say, I made this, I did this, instead of just buying it, and it just has a calming effect, I think, on most people. You sit there, you don't think about your problems, you're just concentrating on your craft.
Oh,
It's
100%.
such a fun and relaxing thing to do.
Oh, hi Lisa. I think one of your players is in the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, they get everywhere, don't they?
She calls me evil DM. It's all a show. I'm like, I'm a big softie as far as like DM. I just seem evil.
Come on, you got to keep the storytelling interesting.
That's right. I got to keep that facade up. I do get a kind of perverse pleasure though of running people through things, or getting, putting them in particularly tricky situations. I might have a little bit of a smile or a smirk on my face as I wait for them to decide what they're going to do.
Yeah, but after you've spent all the time writing and setting up a scenario and getting them prepped for it, and then I think you deserve the glow of success.
Yeah, I agree, and I love seeing what the players do because they never do the same. Like players will never do the same thing. No two group of players will ever do the same thing. They'll come at it some different way, or even if it's a general, they'll do it the same way. There's always details that are different. So that's what I love about role playing. It's not like any other medium, right? It's like you go to a movie, it's scripted from beginning to end. Everything is going to happen the way it happens every time you watch it. It's never going to be different. Same with a book, or same with a play. And RPGs are similar to those things, but they're not the same, because it's really the players, the main characters, can literally change the story, where that would never happen in any of those other media.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever had a group of players which who let me run a story as I had planned it from beginning to end, and I think that's beautiful because they come up with stuff that I couldn't have come up with.
And I'm never like, I'm more of the school of like, okay, these events are happening. They're going to happen whether the players interfere or not. Okay, but when the players get involved, that's when things change, right? Because it's kind of like, okay, whatever evil machinations the bad guy has, this is what would happen if the players don't do anything, right? His plan would go through, like with, say, Lord of the Rings, like Sauron, right?
Mm-hmm.
If none of the group shows up, if none of them come to the Elrond circle and decide that they're going to go on this quest, what would happen to Middle Earth if they never showed up, right? And that's kind of how I like to think about the story. And then when the players show up, that's when they have their that's when they have their ability to change everything. That's when they have their volition and their action in the story that changes everything. So
I think it's
hopefully to a better conclusion.
I think it's much more organic that way rather than waiting for the players to do something and then the story progresses and so on. I mean, things are happening anyway, whether you do something or not.
Exactly. So I may have a general sense of like where a campaign is going or something, but I never like decide, oh, A is necessarily going to lead to B to C to D, because if the players do some variation or change something, then that changes the story. That might change the direction of the story. So that's the problem with some of these written modules. Like sometimes they're assuming that the players are going to do this and this and this, and sometimes they don't. So you gotta improvise. One thing I don't like particularly about pre-written modules is the thing where they take a bad guy and they give them like an out. So whatever the players do, the bad guy will escape.
Okay. I get it.
Yeah. And that is, to me, that's kind of cheating, right? Because if the players do everything right and they catch this guy off guard and they're going to defeat him and you just snatch it away, that's taking their victory. Every time you do that, that's taking their victory away, right?
Yeah, it's kind of frustrating. Even you have the typical off-screen that falls off a ravine, disappears, but it's a trope, that he's coming back in 5-6 episodes or whatever.
Right, exactly. So that's one thing where movies and books and everything might lead somebody down a wrong path. It's like, oh, the bad guy always gets away. Well, they don't. In an RPG, they don't. So you could do that once. You could snatch victory from them once with a bad guy, but if you keep doing it, or when they quest for something, if you keep snatching it away, the players are not going to want to play because they feel like you've taken their volition away in the game and they can't do anything. Why are we playing this? We can't actually change the story. We can't solve things. Why are we playing this game? So that's one thing I think game masters really have to be careful about doing that kind of thing. That's the kind of things like right. That's the kind of things in movies that work great, but don't work good in an RPG. Another one is like mysteries, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mysteries generally don't work good in an RPG because either they can't figure it out, it's too convoluted, or they figure it out in 5 minutes. And you had like a 4-hour session plan and they figured it out in 5 minutes, right? So you really got to be careful with the kind of mystery stuff like that, which works great because in a book or a movie, because they're going to reveal the information as it pertains to the plot, the story, the pacing of the whole thing, right? Where in an RPG, someone might have a brilliant idea and they just figure it out.
Yeah.
No matter how hard you thought it was. We in my on Quest Givers with my North Road campaign, Gareth and I tackled that issue with doing a mystery that you can actually run. And what we did is, this is the trick we did. The trick is everybody's guilty.
Oh.
Right? There's like multiple murderers, or people think they murdered the person, right?
Okay.
So there's no quick solution, right? As you kind of find out one, you find out more. Well, wait a minute, this doesn't quite fit. Let's check this person. Yeah. So it's like you don't end up with that, oh, I figured it out in 5 minutes thing. Right. Also, it's just like kind of idyllic little town in the mountains, right?
Okay.
With this beautiful setting, and everybody is horrible. Like the constables are incompetent, right? But everybody else in the town is horrible. Like they're all like everybody except for like 2% of the people are like horrible in the town, talking about each other. They did it, you know, reasons they did it. The only nice person in the town, besides this mentor character that shows up, is the dog.
Oh.
And everybody hates the dog. Like they kick it, they're mean to it, they chase it off. It's just Mutt, you know, it's just Mutt dog, and he actually helps the characters like solve the mystery. If you're attentive to the dog, you know, he like will lead you to clues and this kind of thing. And it's fun because we kind of have like in the North Road book, we kind of have descriptions of like what the dog does. A normal dog things what the normal things the dog does to try to get you to follow it or listen to it or whatever. Okay. And then we have like actual dialogue for the dog if you like can speak to animals.
Yeah, that's one thing I learned to prepare early on, because anyone with the ability to do that will just start chatting up cats, dogs, mice, whatever they come across.
Right.
Okay, quick
I'm
hello.
just looking at the chat there.
Quick hello to Sean, Tina Martins, Lawrence Davies, and The End. Thanks for joining us. And Campaign Terrain is saying, I've crafted terrain for 40 plus years. However, Scotty is definitely a major influence in me starting a video/social presence.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And Campaign Terrain also says that, yeah, the best laid plans never go past the first scene. It's like, don't try to script this out. Like, if anything, don't try to script out an adventure. It's just never going to work. It'll never flow that way. It'll never go that way. And then if you try to force it that way, that's the easiest way to lose players, because once players think that they don't have any action in the game, they're gone. They're not going to last long. Because why bother? Why bother coming over and telling your story, right?
Yeah, it's more. It's not a game anymore at this point.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
yes.
You know, as far as like terrain goes, we haven't really touched much on terrain, but you know, when I started doing this, I come from a war game background, so I like that visual on the table. And I think the visual of the terrain kind of helps focus players. And some people might say that it can distract players from what's going on in the game. But I think what it does more is it focuses players into this imaginary world, right? Because you've got to use all your tools available. Don't just throw the terrain down and say that's an orc or that's a whatever. You know, this terrain becomes this miniature fantasy world that we're all focused in, right? It becomes the point of focus.
It's kind of like
and
a
you
stage,
bring
right?
it to life as a game master, right? You the way you describe things and the way the order of things happen, and and like when I lay out terrain, I don't always lay out all the terrain, right? Like a board game, right? A board game, when you lay out terrain, you put everything out, right? Because you can't play without everything on the board. Well, RPGs aren't like that. So what I do is, like, when you come into a room or an area, I might lay out stuff that you can see, but as the characters start to move around, like, oh, you notice this, and then I put something else on the board, which then makes the terrain dynamic and less board gamey, because it's actively changing with what the players are doing, right? So things that the players wouldn't see, or a good example is a hidden enemy, right? If you have a hidden enemy, don't just put the enemy out on the board. Just put the enemy out there and they can see it. It's hidden. They have to find it. And that's the easiest way to think about it. But there also, you can think about it as terrain itself. Like, they don't see the chest until they, go through, they go, around this obstacle, or they don't see, something that might be good for them until they go around the obstacle, or someone listening to them, or whatever it is. I try to make it dynamic. I try to make the terrain as dynamic as the imaginations of the players.
I think it also kind of encourages exploration.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly. The three tenets, exploration, social encounters or RPGing, and combat. I try to do those in equal measure. That doesn't always happen in equal measure, but I think the best games, unless you're just doing a total social game or whatever, are those three, and exploration is part of that. That's why when people go into an area, I don't read a paragraph of description, because the players are not doing anything. They're not doing anything while you do that. They're just sitting there. Okay, when can I do something? I'm sitting here for 5 minutes, you're reading this description. What I like to do is give the shortest description possible and let them go and discover stuff. You know what I'm saying? Let them go in and say, okay, do I see this, or what's this, or that kind of thing, because then that immediately gets them engaged. You don't want to steal their thunder. I'm the kind of GM or DM that likes to get in and get out. I get in as quick as possible, give them the shortest possible explanation or description, and get out. I'm not one of those people that reads paragraphs, at the table.
I think I know what you mean, because even as a player,
Yeah.
I start zoning out if a description is too long.
Exactly. They will start zoning out after a minute, or less. So get in there, get out, that kind of thing.
Okay, so speaking of terrain, I'm just going to drop the link to the Discord in case anyone wants to throw in any of their work to show off. We're going to have a
Awesome.
look at it later.
Awesome.
So, going back, you mentioned that you had started from wargaming. So, is that where you started building terrain? And
It was, yeah. In the in the 90s, I was building actually 40K terrain, Warhammer 40,000, and selling it on eBay.
really,
I was
all right,
doing quite well with it as a side hustle.
nice.
And this is before YouTube or any of this stuff. And there were a group of us who were doing quite well doing this, and then the recession hit, and then that shut all that down, because it's like people didn't have money for that kind of stuff. People didn't have money for that kind of stuff. So I kind of stopped doing that. And then what got me back in, how I made the transition from doing that kind of terrain to the D&D thing was, I had some friends at work, and they're like, oh, we should play D&D. I'm like, oh, that'd be fun. This is like about 15 years ago or more. And I was like, okay, cool. And like, okay, you're going to be the dungeon master, because we don't know how to do it. I'm like, okay. So, because I had done it earlier in my life, but I hadn't really done it through kind of my 20s and 30s, except for a little bit with my kids, because I don't know, I just didn't have the time and all this kind of stuff. I was going to school and work and all this.
Yeah, pretty much the same.
So yeah. So I got back into it, and then we were doing theater of the mind and all that stuff, and I just love figures. I'd always collected, even when I played when I was younger, I collected figures and like made crude dungeon tiles and stuff like this out of cardboard. And I thought, okay, I should bring that back into the game, because it's just certain people are more visually oriented. It's like some people have to keep asking, well, okay, where am I? What am I doing? What's happening? If you see the terrain, it's much easier for those kind of visual people to get it, and it just helps with everyone, I think. But the visual people, like, it really helps, right? It's a big thing for them. So I started, okay, the thing was, okay, how can I do this cheaply and quickly? Because I was like, I want to, I don't have all this time between games, I'm still working full time and all this stuff. How can I do this quick? And then the cardboard and hot glue, because it's like almost instant bond with the hot glue, right? And I thought, well, darn, this is really cool, right? Maybe I should tell some people about this. So I did it. I kind of sheepishly set up a video, got some cheap editing software, and just basically talked to the camera and shot what I was doing, and then edited it together. And I'm pretty embarrassed with those videos now, but it's like, you know, I hate taking that stuff down because it's like, it's kind of like a history of the crafting,
Yeah, pretty much.
where crafting started from, right? It's like, you know, I'm not saying I was the person, no one else ever crafted for D&D. That's definitely not true. The old guys did. I mean, you know, back in the day when they first started D&D and Blackmore and all that stuff, you know, Dave Arneson they used miniatures, and, you know, they didn't have the stuff we have today, but they used like knight miniatures and stuff like that, and dragons, and
Yeah, I
he
think I
made
remember they
castles
had
and stuff like that.
their were gaming collections. I think I saw some photos of them, and they had a lot of miniatures. A lot of
They did,
miniatures.
yeah, yeah. So, you know, I'm not, you know, the first person to ever think of this by a long shot. But I think where I fit is, my idea was to like make this accessible for everyone, right? Whether you think you have a stitch of skill or not, I want you to be able to sit down and make something that looks good. You know what I'm saying? And you can, if you follow those videos, as crude as they are, you can make stuff that looks good at your table. And the players will be wow, because players not used to any terrain will just
Of course.
be mind blown when you put something down. Right? They're like, wow, you know, look at this, you know. Yeah. So the players just loved it, loved it. And so I'm like, there is something here. I gotta get this out somewhere. And that's why I started doing the videos. And then what I was trying to work out when I initially did it was the walls. Like the walls and that kind of 3D stuff makes it hard to play, right? Because not only is it harder to see into the terrain,
You also have to reach in, and yeah.
you have to reach in and you're knocking stuff down. And like, if you have an ogre like this with this big of a stand and you're putting it in a room this big and it has walls, you can barely fit it in there, right? But if you don't have the walls, then it's easier. So what I did was I basically simulated walls on the cardboard by cutting little 1/4-inch strips and gluing that to the edge of the cardboard. And that became the walls of the terrain. But it did two things. It didn't inhibit play by blocking player sight, because unlike a war game where we stood up most of the time because you have all this high terrain, when you're playing an RPG, you don't want to keep standing up, right? You're sitting there with your Coke and your Cheetos and your dice, and you want to sit there and just chill, have fun, imagine. And if you can't see it or you can't move in it very well, that kind of inhibits the fun. So I just took the walls out, that's what became the 2.5D method, by putting the short walls on the terrain. And I still to this day don't put walls on my terrain. Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I was thinking about it last week, how it's kind of where gamers don't think to play sitting down, and role players don't think about playing standing up. It's I forgot how I got thinking about it, but it's kind of an interesting division.
Totally. Yeah. If you told the role players to stand up, they'd be like, "What?
Why you do
But
this?"
as a war gamer, like I didn't want to sit down, you know, because it's like, oh, I'm watching this guy maneuver his troops or where they're going, you know, and like we would have like hills and, you know, big rock formations and all, you know, ruins and all kinds of like crazy 3D stuff. So I went opposite with the RPG stuff. I try to avoid having stuff that's too tall at the game. And if I do, what I do is I face it towards me. Like I have it facing the players and the back is towards me.
Okay, yeah, I think so. It's like if you have a kind of a stage, you're behind the stage rather than so that there's an unimpeded view. Yeah.
So they're facing they're facing a stage, right? So exactly. Like I'm the back of the stage, I'm behind the stage, and they're facing the stage. So if I do anything vertical or whatever, that's what I usually do. I also have a cool thing where I do, like if it's a really high vertical encounter where you're climbing up, minis will fall off and they could break, and this kind of thing. So I'll play it horizontally instead of vertically, right? I'll lay it down on the table. There may be like the cliff way, the ledges and this kind of thing, but then you take the miniature and you lay it on its side to show that it's standing up, right? Or climbing up the cliff, right? And it works great because you can put the miniature exactly where they are, right? If they're climbing up the cliff, you can't necessarily do that with a thing that's standing up, right?
Oh yeah, I mean,
because if you don't have something for the miniature to grab onto, it's going to fall off. Yeah, you bump it, it's going to fall off.
And you have a lot more space to play with. I mean, like, you can get, I don't know, 6 feet on the table, but if your actual piece is 6 feet tall, then that's
right,
going
you
to be
may
very
not be able to
uncomfortable.
reach it. Yeah, on the table you could reach it, but if it's 6 feet high, you might not be able to reach it. So it's a great technique. I've done it with things like, where the players there's a pit and the players are climbing down this hole, and I had like these vines, I just laid them on the table, and the players are climbing down the vines, and all of a sudden these centipedes are coming up the vines, and they're hang on and fight them. And it's all since it's all horizontal, you can have exactly where the players, they don't have to be on handholds or hooks or whatever, because it's actually vertical. Since it's horizontal, you can just put them anywhere. It works great. It's a great technique to trick,
Yeah,
tricky like
I especially like the fact that if someone gets excited and bumps the table, you don't get a shower of miniatures.
Yeah.
It's a really simple idea, but it's brilliant. It solves so many problems.
It does, and I love doing terrain at conventions, but that's the real challenge, because at home you can what I do is I set up a staging table behind me, like a fold out table, and I can just put all the miniatures and terrain and stuff I'm going to use for the session behind me. And then, but when you're going somewhere like a convention, you don't have that luxury of having all this space, all this kind of stuff. So you got to make it as compact as possible. So what I started doing for conventions was terrain modules. And what they are they're short plastic cases, like rectangular, that I lay out everything beforehand. I might glue it in, or I might, if it's control panels, I might glue it in, or, sticky tack it in with that sticky tack. And you, like, for example, a ship, you just lay out the terrain module, take the lid off, and there's a ship.
And you play directly into the tub.
Yeah. Play right in the plastic container.
It's efficient.
And it works great, because I've done things where I did this rocket patrol where it was like I had 3 of them lined up together. I had like a nose cone and tail on it, and just laid it out, and it became the rocket ship. I did a Star Trek inspired game where it was like a Federation type ship, much smaller as a scout ship, because it's that'd be really big to real like the Enterprise would be huge to try to do, but this was more like a scout ship. But it was like I had like 3 terrain modules laid out, one for the bridge and one for the engineering and one for like the center section of the ship, like like medical and all that. So that's a great technique for traveling, and you could even do it with dungeons too. You could pre-build dungeons in those and do that kind of thing.
It saves the pieces being shaken to pieces while you're traveling and stuff as well.
Right. Nice. Or like, oh, I got everything in this separate box, now I got to transfer it over here. It's already in there. You've already got it. Even if you don't glue it down or have it connected or whatever, it's already in the box, so it's pretty quick to set up. You've got everything, like, here's everything I need for this terrain box. I just set it up. So I'm always, when I think about crafting, that's always part of it, like playability, right? Looks, of course, you want it to look good. Playability, and for conventions, like transportability, like how can I transport this without destroying it?
Yeah, usually I think mostly about durability, because I also mostly make wargaming terrain rather than role-playing, and I don't know why game, but for some reason wargamers do seem to be a bit rougher on the terrain than RPG
Oh
players.
yes. Oh yeah. Yeah. I can attest to that.
Okay, playability obviously because you actually need to use it, but other stuff like that, like for example transportability, it's not like another puzzle to layer onto the whole thing. It's interesting idea.
Right. So
Nice wonder.
those are all things I think about when I make terrain, when I'm doing terrain for uh, to transport somewhere, or and even just home games. It's about playability. Like it's like, okay, what makes this look cool but be the most playable, right?
Hmm.
And then that's for example, that's the vertical encounter, right? The vertical encounter that's horizontal. It's like that makes it really playable, but still gives that feeling that you're climbing a cliff or going up somewhere that's really high, because it's all abstract in your mind anyway, right?
Oh yeah.
That's part of where bringing the imagination is just as important as like what you have on the table, like the props,
Hmm.
right?
I mean those are interesting points to think about. Yeah. Uh, are there any other tips for playability apart from cutting out the walls or is it anything else that you came up with?
Right. The walls is the biggest thing, but
Yeah.
with the walls, you could still have like things, like if you want to have like doors or whatever, you just put the door at the edge, and you can have it's 3D, it's vertical, right? But
Hmm.
it's not big enough that it blocks the whole way around. It doesn't block the tile. Um, the playability thing, yeah. So I even evolved beyond the 2.5D.
Hmm.
I went to my tilescapes, which is no walls at all, because the 2.5D had walls out of like thin card, like had walls out of thin strips of cardboard. So you had to configure them in a certain way, because this area was if it was a hallway, this area was open and this area wasn't, because there were
Hmm.
walls. But if you use tiles that don't have any walls, you can put them any way and just put a door between the two, and that denotes the demarcation between each tile, right? You don't need the wall. Also, another playability factor that I find that um, that can be a problem with people that make terrain is like they don't take into account the playability of the ranges of the game, right? Now, I know a room generally isn't going to be very big, like 10 or 15 feet, but that's only like that big in game, right?
Yeah.
And you can only fit like 3 or 4 miniatures like next to each other in it, right? That doesn't give you any maneuverability room. So I always exaggerate scale, right? If it's a tower, it's never like this big. It's like this big, because you need room to move. You need room to move around in the game, because scales are abstracted, right?
Hmm.
With the miniatures, they're abstracted. Essentially 1 inch equals 5 feet, right? So yes, the things are bigger, generally bigger. The rooms are bigger, you know, that kind of thing. But you need that for gameplay, because if you just have a bunch of small rooms, you don't have anywhere to maneuver,
Yeah,
right?
I see what you mean. It becomes less interesting to move around.
Exactly. And it might be more realistic. It is more realistic to have smaller rooms in smaller areas and smaller towers. But if you have a tower that's this big, you've only got room for the stairway, and maybe one figure could stand in there and look out a window. You know what I'm saying? You have no room for combat.
Which is again
Um,
realistic, but really
yeah,
boring.
yeah. So I see this stuff and it's like, yeah, that's cool, but can you really play on that? You know,
That makes a lot of sense.
yeah. And I generally don't build um, a lot of 3D stuff,
Yeah.
um, like whole towns or buildings or this kind of thing. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But in my style of play, it's like if they're going to a place, here's the building, and they go there, and they're like, okay, we're gonna go inside, and then you take the building off and you have a tile, or you take the top off and you have a tile inside, or I just put a tile down. I don't even, I
Much
don't
easier.
even take the top off or anything. I just put a tile down. Like I just describe, generally what I do is I describe the building, then they go in and I put a tile down, because they've looked at the building for a minute. You spent 3 weeks making a building that they've looked at for a minute, and then it goes back on your shelf, right? I mean, it looks pretty, but it's like, how much, I'm always like, how much am I going to use this? And that's and I think of, like, when I say I think of things in game terms, I know not everybody does, and you don't have to, but in my game, I think of things in game terms. So it's like cities. If they go to cities, I don't make a whole city and put all the buildings out. That's cool, but it becomes more like a dollhouse play where you're like, I'm going to go to this, it's like we can just role play where you go, right? I'm going to go talk to so-and-so, or talk to the guy at the church or whatever. You don't have to have the actual church. You
Or
can just talk to
or
them.
just use a map
And
if you have
then,
to. But yeah, I guess what you mean.
right. And then if something happens at the church, lay out tiles and put stuff down, put some things down. And a trick I'll do to get away from like doing a whole building is do a front of a building. Hollywood would do this, right?
Okay, yeah.
Hollywood makes just, if you're going to see just the front of a building, they'll just make the front. They won't make the back, right? So you can just put the front in front of you, which is a lot easier to make than a whole building, right? If there's going to be some time role playing there, maybe, and then move it and put the tiles down or whatever. So I use just fronts, or you can even put fronts on the front of tiles and leave them there, because since it's only the front, it's not obstructing play like like a whole building would, right?
So it's kind of like a backdrop to the game.
Yeah.
That saves a lot of work.
Yeah, it does. It saves a lot of work, and but it depends on what style of the game you're going to run. I mean, some people love laying out a city, and that's whole fine. And I have done that. I've laid out town squares and stuff like this before, because like the action is going to happen there, right? The whole action is going to happen there, so it's worth my time to do that. But the buildings might be just might not all be like 3D masterpieces. They might just be some boxes stacked on top of each other with a roof on it and some minor details applied. Like a simple construction kind of thing, but still get that feeling of like a town square or town center. And yeah, there's nothing wrong with that if the main action is happening there. But if it's not, if it's just kind of going around talking to people or shopping, it's like you don't really need to set out a whole village or town or city, because it becomes just moving your miniature. I feel it becomes more just moving your miniatures around and less like involved with the story of what's going on, because that's generally when you're finding out stuff and sussing out stuff and sussing out the place. So just things I think about when I make terrain.
Okay, so in these cases, we're saying that you don't necessarily want your players to be focused on the board. You want them to be focused on what you're telling them.
Right. So if they're talking to like NPCs and trying to suss it out, I find it's just fine to talk, just role play it out. Theater of the mind, role play it out. Don't worry about. Although one thing I've started doing, which can be kind of fun, is to take those cheap plastic picture frames, and there's so many pictures on the internet now of like fantasy characters that you can print those out on your printer, cut them out, put them in a picture frame, and when they talk to somebody, instead of having the house or whatever they go and put the picture out in front of you, and that's like who they're talking to, right? If it's a swarmy kind of guy like this, and you could put it like a swarmy picture out of a guy that fits the NPC. So then that becomes the visual focus, and not we're going to the potion shop or whatever. It becomes the NPC becomes the visual focus
Yeah,
of this
I
theme.
think that's the same thing that they used on older computer games. Like when you don't really have you don't have voice recordings to differentiate the
Yeah,
characters. You can't differentiate them graphically because all the sprites are the same. Here's a picture of them. Yeah,
right, exactly. Yeah, here's a picture of them. Right, exactly.
that's a good way to apply it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It works well. It's a nice trick. You can also do that with terrain. Like say you do go to the city and you don't want to build the whole city. You don't want to put it all out on the table, right? You could find some fantasy art, put it in a bigger frame, put it in front of you, and that could be the location, right? So there's still somewhere to focus, but they're not focused on moving their little miniatures around like a dollhouse,
Mm-hmm.
going to this store and this store. They're focused on what the place looks like or the mood of the place, because a lot of fantasy art has like a certain mood, right? If it's like a run downtown or whatever, that the fantasy art definitely conveys that kind of mood, whereas miniatures may not. Miniatures may not convey that mood. But like a picture with fog and all
Oh,
this
yeah.
kind of stuff, and dilapidated buildings, that you can see close up, may get that feeling across actually easier than terrain. So that's another trick you could do too. You can get a location. There's tons of fantasy now. There's just tons of fantasy art online. It's so easy to find just about anything you're looking for.
You're
So
you're
yeah,
just reminding me of Sebastian's channel at Musica, where he does that thing with smoke machines and stuff, and
yeah, 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 yeah.
I think your way is much easier.
Yeah, yeah. I do. Effects are fun at the table too. I do love lighting effects, I must say.
Okay.
And music. Music is great too. And lighting effects go a long way to getting a mood. I've used things where glow in the dark stuff. So like here, I'll show you an example. Like I made this nest here. See if I can get it.
Once.
I made this nest here that has eggs in it. And what I did for the goo was it's just hot glue poured in,
Okay.
but the eggs are airsoft pellets, glow in the dark airsoft pellets. So when you shine a black light on it, the eggs all glow. It's really, really cool. So that kind of stuff, I love doing that kind of stuff at the table. It's super fun
That's
to
really
do the
efficient.
kind of lighting.
Ah, that
Yeah,
is really efficient.
yeah, yeah. Do we have any questions in the chat people were asking, or
Okay, so let's see.
as I ramble on?
I'm just going to go through them back real quickly. High evolution of aiming, high the end. The end says he severed his thumb, almost severed his thumb. Oh, get well soon, man. Okay. Dungeon Matron says, oh, this is a good question. Scotty, are you going to make crafting videos related to your upcoming Easy Die 6 system?
Oh, that is a great question. I hadn't really planned on it specifically for the Easy D6, but I do have like a lot of my own monsters in the system, so that would be fun to do some of those to craft some of those monsters. But the whole idea of the Easy D6 is that you can really it's really a system you can play with, with anything. You can make the system your own very easily. So yeah, I didn't have any specific really things for it, but I am working on a world book for it. So maybe I'll do more crafting videos for the world book when I do the world book, which is I'm working on next.
Okay, so just to stay on the subject, could you tell us a bit more about Easy D6 and how it came about, and the world book sounds interesting too.
I'd love to. Yeah, the Easy D6 system, it sprang from what I wanted to do at the table, how I wanted to run a game. Okay. When I ran games, particularly at conventions, but any games in general, there were certain things that I noticed that made the game hang up or slow down. Okay, I call them rules breaks, right? Whenever you have to roll dice, a bunch of dice, that takes time. Whenever you have to look at your sheet and look up something, that takes time. Whenever you have to look at the numbers on your sheet and add them to other numbers, that takes time. And it gets worse. As the characters level up, first it's not so bad, but as the characters level up, it gets worse and worse and worse because you're adding more dice. You know, think about, rolling a fireball. You're rolling, it's cool to roll 6 to 8 dice or whatever, but then you got to add all those up, and some people are much better at doing that than others. So that's all, I call those rules breaks. Whenever you have to look up something in the game, that slams the game to a halt, and everybody is just sitting there looking at each other while you figure this out, while the mage character, wizard character looks at their spell and figures out how to do it. All these kind of things. Where you rolled a hit, you roll damage, and you got to, I got to add my bonus to that. And what are my bonus dice? All that takes time, right? So I'm like, how can I avoid all that? So how I approached Easy D6 was from the aspect of how can I make a smooth running game a smoother running game, as opposed to, and a quicker running game, as opposed to, oh, I have a cool rule system, now I'll make a game around it. You know what I'm saying? It came from the need and the want, as opposed to the abstract idea of, oh, I have this abstract cool dice system of rolling 4 dice, and then you subtract it by 3, and then you carry the 2, all this weird abstract stuff that are more and more game systems are coming up with these days, to just boiling it down to the basic essentials, right? Because the basic essential of playing a game is flipping a coin, heads you hit, tails you miss, right? That's the basic, but that's a little too basic. Okay, so that's where I came to the D6. All right, so okay, that gives you enough variation, but not a lot of variation. So if you're using a D6 and you're choosing what the target number is, from 1 is always a miss or 1 is always a fail, to 2 to 6 is the best outcome. So choosing a number between 2 and 6 is very easy, right? If it's kind of medium difficulty, go with a 3. If it's really hard, go with a 6. Now, if you're rolling a D20, it's a lot harder to think about, okay, should it be 15 or 13 or 12 or
slightly
you know
harder,
what I'm saying?
slightly easier.
There's more range in there that you need to think about. With the D6, it's really quick to come up with a number to roll. So that was the idea. And I just kind of went from there. So the next thing was hit points. Okay, why do we need 20, 30, 50, 100 hit points? And it ends up being the same thing, right? Because a goblin hitting you at first level might kill you in 3 hits, right? Then when you're 9th level, it takes an ogre 3 hits to kill you. It's still 3 hits. Right?
Yeah, just the stuff that you're meeting is larger. Yeah.
It's still 3 hits. So why not just say, okay, 3 strikes, you're out, right? So all the characters have 3 strikes and they're dead. When you take the 3rd strike, you're dead. Now, there are ways to mitigate that in the game. One is armor. I actually have you roll for armor, which is fun. So I tried to keep all the fun rules in the game. The rules that would take time in the game, I would be fun for the player. Those are the rules that you want to be visible in the game. The other rules, like running the game, you want those to be totally invisible to the player, right? You tell them what they roll it, they fail or they succeed. That's it. There's no math in the game because there's no character scores. How I handle bonuses in the game are called boons and banes. And with a boon, you just roll an extra die. With a bane, you roll a die and subtract it, or you subtract it from multiple dice if you have multiple dice. Now, the thing about that is, it's not like a die pool or anything where you roll and I got to pick out all the 4s, because that takes time, right? But if you roll 2 or 3 dice and you take the highest one,
It's in front of
that
you. It's
doesn't
easy. Yeah.
take any time. That's instant. Like it's instant gratification. It's not like a normal dice pool where you gotta like figure out, okay, I rolled this many 3s or that. That all takes time. It shuts the game down. Just bam, you know, with the even rolling multiple dice, it's bam, you got it. You just take your highest die. That's it. And I wanted it so that veteran players and newbies could play at the same table easily. Like they wouldn't be intimidated. That's a big thing, I think, with some of these more complicated games. They feel there's certain rule strategies and synergies. You got to know what the rules, or you're not going to be doing your best, you know. And like some people are just really intimidated by that, and they don't get it. It's a lot of stuff. My system, anybody can sit down and play it virtually immediately, you know, because
Yeah,
you don't need to learn all that stuff.
think about, for example, campaign train saying I'd play it, but I'm still die 100 for life. And yeah, okay, fair enough. I know that the some of the systems that use die 100 are really straightforward, but when you're explaining them to a beginner for the first time, they end up like,
right, exactly. What die is this? What do I roll?
yeah,
You know,
how, when,
I
what
just
do
say,
I do?
okay, right, you roll a d6, you get this 3 or better, you succeed, you don't. You know, it's like that's it. There's no and since the characters don't have scores, you don't have to keep looking at your sheet, because that's a rules break, right? That stops the game down as you, okay, what do I got? Okay, I got to add 9 to that, and I got to add this. Okay, there, I got it. Now I got it. You know, with this, it's roll it. You got it instantly.
Nice.
Also, I do every weapon except for large weapons does 1 strike of damage. So whether it's a broadsword or a dagger, it's all 1 strike of damage. It's all that is flavor. All weapons are just flavor. So that's easy to. There's no thinking about what happens there, right? You just do a strike of damage. But I also have in the game exploding dice, which are fun.
Oh,
Right.
okay, yeah, okay.
I always love exploding dice in games because you can kill anything. You can kill anything if you're lucky enough, right? You can kill a dragon if you're lucky enough. The lowliest person can kill, or a goblin can kill you if they're lucky enough, which the players and the NPCs aren't quite equal because the players have a few things up their sleeves.
Okay.
One is every hero gets a hero die at the start of the session. You can re-roll it anytime and burn it. You use it up, you burn it, it replaces any die you roll. So even a 1. So even if you roll a 1 that just is an automatic failure, you can re-roll it and lose it. So you have that in your pocket. That's kind of a nice last ditch thing. You also have karma. Okay.
Okay.
So every time you fail a roll, you can only get 1 a turn, but every time you fail a roll, you get a karma. And the karma can be used to change your die roll 1 pip up. So if you roll a 3 and you spend a karma, it's now a 4. So what could happen is the way the crits work, if you roll a 6, that's a crit. If you roll the die again, if you get another 6, that's a confirmed crit. You do another strike, then you roll again. If you get another 6, you do another strike, you roll another 6. So what you can do is spend karma to boost those to 6s and roll again, right? If you have enough karma, if you stash your karma, say you save your karma for the whole game to fight the big bad, right? You can keep boosting it with your karma, you know, and keep, you know, or you can use them for your saving rolls. If you make an armor save, you're going to take a wound. You can use it for that. So it's great, and that's the kind of rule that I love, that players will love, because it's your decision to hoard it or spend it. You know, how do you want to use it? Also, it kind of takes the sting out of failed dice rolls, because failing dice rolls sucks. Let's just face it, it sucks. But if you get something, you get a treat for failing, it's like, it's not so bad. Okay, I got a karma, and eventually you're going to get enough karma that you're not going to fail, right? You can spend them. You're not going to fail the whole game. If you're just a horrible roller and you can't roll any of the rolls, you're going to get enough karma that you can make rolls, right? So you're not going to have the bad luck for the whole game. So I love that. I love that.
When you say karma, is it like an alignment mechanic, like if you do good things, you get karma, or is it like experience points where you show up and you get that? How does that work?
Right. Karma, generally what I do is we award 3 karma at the start of the session. You get a karma. If you fail a roll on your turn, you get a karma for it. Now, if you fail 6 rolls, you don't get 6 karma. You can only get 1 a turn. Or the game master, who I call the rabble rouser, can the rabble rouser can award karma for like good role playing or whatever. So if someone does something that's above and beyond, or they have just a great moment of role playing, a great moment at the table, you can give everybody involved a karma. You know, that's a nice treat to encourage that kind of stuff. So that's how you get karma. That's how you get it. Yeah.
Sonder from 1d6 crafting damage says he's happy someone else shares his love of d6s. And the end is asking, there should be, I imagine, ways to earn strikes or lives, so you might be able to take more than 3 strikes. So is it always 3 strikes, or can you upgrade somehow?
Well, you could upgrade. There are magic items that could give you another strike. There's also a character called a brute, which starts with 5 strikes instead of 3.
All right.
So instead of character classes, I have hero paths, and there are certain here. I have the warrior, the delver, the warden, the rascal, the conjurer, the friar, the beastmaster. So I have all these hero paths, and then I have what I call, then you choose a race, and then I have what you call inclinations, which are basically like talents from other games, right? So it's like it gives you some special thing. So it might be like, oh, you can never be surprised. You can never be surprised, or you start with double the amount of karma, or undead have a harder time hitting you. You know, all these different kinds of things. I have actually some magical abilities in there, so that characters, it's pretty cool, because characters, like if you're a warrior, you know, you're usually kind of stuck in that warrior thing, right? Well, if you chose the hero path warrior, and then you chose like some thiefly abilities from the inclinations, you could be like a thief warrior, or you could be like kind of a magic using warrior, like, or any character can choose devout, which is basically your you can call on miracles from your god, which is always hard to do, but it can happen. So any character could essentially be a cleric or a paladin by taking devout. So I like that the inclinations in there give you a lot of variation as far as like the type of character. You're not kind of locked into that character. You can flavor that character nicely with the inclinations. And then I have a couple of aspects where you can say something about your character that wouldn't be necessarily in the rules. Like my character never shows emotion, which, you know, you could give them a boon die if that might be important. So say they're being questioned by somebody,
or playing poker,
and there's someone that never shows emotion, that you might give them a boon die because they can't read the person, right? They can't read that person. Or maybe you could say, oh, I'm a light sleeper. So, you know, if someone comes around a camp to try to sneak up on you, you know, they could wake up. You'd have a better chance of waking up, you know. So although the aspects are more like descriptive of the character, they can also be used in game if the player can make a reason it should work.
So overall, it's a system that favors fast-moving play. So keep going. Yeah,
exactly.
I like the sound of that.
In fact, I get in trouble a lot at conventions because
why is that?
The players get so excited because with no rules breaks to slow the game down and stop it, people are getting like like it's flying at lightning speed. Like the game is going fast, and like things, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, and players are literally getting excited, like they're screaming and like, oh my god, this and this and this, you know, it's like, shh, can you guys calm it down a little bit, because you're not, okay, wait a minute, I got to check that, let's see that spell, how many spells do I got, gotta check that, okay, this dude does this, all right, let me roll these dice, okay, got that, all right, this is what I got, what do you now roll your defense or whatever, you know. So it's like that's a rules break where this game doesn't have it. Now magic was the hardest part to do in this game, because
Okay.
magic is tricky to do light, right? It's tricky to do because what I find that most things do when they do light is they do, okay, we'll make it light by giving you a bunch of a few really lame spells, right? There's no like super awesome spells, right? In a light, I challenge you to find very many light systems that have super awesome spells. Most of them are pretty lame, right? They're the standard, you know, 1E kind of light and cure and bless and, you know, whatever. And I didn't want my system to be that. So the trick was, okay, there's a couple things I want. One is I want it to feel different from fighting, because in D&D, for example, if you cast a firebolt or you swing a sword, it's the same thing. You roll to hit, you roll your damage, and it's essentially the same mechanic, right? The other spells that aren't the same mechanic are the saving throws, right? But a lot of spells are just you roll to hit and you roll the damage. I didn't want that. I wanted something different. But like, how can you do this in an easy system, right? So it's kind of like a mini game that happens.
Right.
The spellcaster, the conjurers take a circle of magic, a circle of sorcery, and so you might be an illusionist, or you might be a necromancer, or you might be whatever. So when you take that, you can basically cast any kind of spell you can think of from that school or that circle.
So it's freeform kind of thing, or
yeah,
right.
Which makes it great when you create characters, because the hard part about making magic users in other games is like, okay, now I made my magic, now I made my wizard, now I got to pick 6 or 7 spells while the other players wait to play. They're all ready, right? They got their stuff done. You got to agonize over spells. You got to figure out. It's like, oh darn it, I picked the wrong spell, right?
I've seen that more often, far too many times.
I've seen that a million times. So it's like there's none of that, because once you pick your circle of sorcery, you're done. There's no picking spells. You make up spells on the fly in the game, which is great because you don't have a spell list to manage. You don't have spell slots to manage. You've got your imagination. And okay, this situation's happening to us. How can I affect it with my school of magic, right? So you tell me your spell, I roll resistance to the spell, and then you try to beat it. So it's kind of a mini game. I won't go into all the details, but it's a mini game. You choose how many dice you roll. I roll the resistance. You got to equal or beat the resistance. If you do, you cast a spell. If you don't, you don't. But I also have in it, the more dice you roll, the more chance you have of casting the spell, but it's also the more chance you have of failing the spell, because if you roll any ones, the spell fails automatically.
Any ones. All right.
Yeah, any ones. So if you roll 3 dice and you roll 2 6s and a 1, you fail the spell because you rolled a 1. But I'm like, I don't want it to be so that conjurers don't have any kind of choice in this, right? So what I did was they can take spell burn, which gives them 1 strike of damage.
Okay.
Remember, the people only have 3, gives you 1 strike of damage for every 1 you roll. So if you really need to cast that spell, if you really want to cast that spell, but you rolled that 1, you can take a strike of damage on yourself and still cast the spell. But one of your other dice would have still had to beat the resistance. You know what I'm saying? Like, you still have to win the spell, but if you get a 1, you can mitigate it. So it gives all that choice to the player, right? It gives all that decision to the player, and it takes it away from just totally random dice rolls, right? There's some choice. So I really like that the magic is dangerous, that it's unpredictable, and you're not restricted by any spell slots. You can cast as many times as you want. It's just you got to beat the resistance of that's rolled by the rabble rouser. So it's a great system. It's a great system, and we were we were playing for an example of the spell, we were playing a game and there was someone who was a shadow caster, and they could like cast, like they could like block people's vision with shadows, or they could cloak themselves with shadows. I give kind of examples in the book, like what you could do with it. So they were in this old monastery where this ancient ritual happened, and the ancient ritual was these philosophers were trying to decide, should we do this ritual to block the gods? Like the gods will no longer have an effect on the world. And it was this huge, big deal, and all the great minds of the world had come together to talk about this and decide on this. So something went horribly wrong, of course, right? The monastery, the place is cursed. There's all kinds of mutants and weirdness going on. Some crazy old guy running around, of course. Take a drink real quick. And they were going through these cells, like monk cells, and they were seeing shades from the past that were like playing out before their eyes, and they were only hearing parts of these conversations. And so the shadow caster was like, oh, could I kind of use my power to like rewind the shades, and like so we can like a VCR or whatever, or a media, and like slow it down and like change it and see what they're saying. And I'm like, hell yeah, you can. And it was just like a really great moment, because the conjurer feels like a badass because they did something really freaking cool. It's not some dumb first level spell, right? This is a badass thing. He slows it down. They see the whole conversation, and they get all this great information about what's going on. Like what the hell is going on here? And then from slowing that conversation down and seeing it, they were able to suss out all the important information, at least up to that point. There's more, to the mystery, but they had an idea what was going on. And this was all made up on this guy just made this up on the fly. Like, oh, can I do this? And, as the rabble rouser, you decide, well, does that fit in the school of magic? And yes, I think that does. Okay, go ahead. You could either have them roll. In his case, I didn't even have them roll for it, because it was just like, if someone's got enough time to cast a spell, it's like, and they're not under duress, it's like, why not just let them cast it, right? So like, say you're at a cliff and you can make plants grow, right? So you make a vine grow up the cliff and everybody climbs up it, right? You have plenty of time, nobody's attacking you. But if like orcs are on your tail and the amount of time is like critical, you need to roll the spell casting rolls to do that, because you have a limited amount of time to cast the spell, right? So that would comes into favor, So, and there are certain things you might want to also make somebody roll, like say a necromancer finds a pile of bones, okay, and they're like, oh, can I like raise this pile of bones into like an undead conglomeration of just like the bones? Like, sure, but I would have them roll for that instead of just, even if they had the time, because maybe the spirits are resistant and don't want that to happen, this kind of thing. Maybe the bones are brittle and explode, when you try to put it together, it shatters. So that's kind of fun, and then you can just give it easy stats, like I do in my, okay, it's about the size of an ogre, I'll give it basically ogre stats, right? So, that's all there is to it. It's, but it's so great because it allows conjurers to be like really creative. And they're also like, you can just say I attack with a spell. There's just easy rules for that. I'm going to cast, I want to cast this, I'm a elementalist. I want to shoot a firebolt at this person. You still use the spell casting rules, but you still use the spell casting rules, but it's easier in game terms because you're just shooting somebody with a firebolt, right? That's all it is.
Yeah, I like the
it's when this
flexibility.
other stuff that I've mentioned would be more thought on the part of the rabble rouser. But yeah, it's a really great system, and it keeps it from having that kind of, it takes away all these problems of like bean counting, like keeping track of your number of spell slots. Oh, now I'm lame because I can't cast any more spells. I'm a character that can't hit anything because I can't cast any spells. It keeps you from being that. It keeps you from all the like agonizing over what spells I'm going to choose this time, or it just gets rid of all that, and makes it a totally creative exercise for the player as well as the rabble rouser. So
Yeah, I like that the flexibility, because it makes it easier to do more complex stuff with the story from both both ends of the table.
Exactly.
And
because they're casting spells that fit the moment, not spells that are pre in a list.
And,
right?
and you don't have to think up a scenario where this spell from a particular list would make sense, because you don't need that.
Exactly. Or they might have a spell that defeats everything that you do. In this system, that would be a lot harder to do. Like to keep casting that, because you can't just cast a spell; you have to roll to cast it. So if like there's something that has a lot of resistance to spells, you're gonna have a hard time doing that. Like the wind spell, using that wind spell. Oh, we win. That's gonna be a lot harder in the system.
And I mean, thinking about it makes it more interesting on the what do you say, the conjurer character, the
conjurer. That's a magic using character.
Because if you look at say D&D mage, for example, in many cases there isn't much difference between a wizard or a crate of hand grenades.
Right.
I mean,
exactly.
Oh, the crafty DM is asking, when will it be out?
Yes, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. It's my birthday's coming up on June 8th.
Oh, so
we're shooting for that week. We're shooting for the week of June 8th. So it should be out mid-June or early June.
Hey, that's great to know.
Yeah.
So is this because you mentioned the world book, is this setting agnostic, or does it have its own setting? How are you working with it?
It is setting agnostic, but I am working on a world book called The Land of Graxel. And then actually Brandish from Runehammer is actually working on a third book for it.
Ooh, nice.
So that's cool, because he's publishing, Runehammer is publishing this. It's going to be on Drive-Thru RPG and Amazon. So it's going to be print on demand. We're going to have we're going to have dice. We're going to have like a special set you can get with like stickers, which are really fun, and dice. I call it Goo Glow, because the cover has this kind of weird green. It's like me on the cover.
The acid green,
Yeah, me on the cover, like going like this, and there's like this weird magic coming up, and there's just the big D6 in the center, this kind of greenish, slimy green D6. And so we have, I call it Goo Glow, and they're glow in the dark dice, which are really cool. Yeah. So, and there'll be some really cool stickers. What would Scotty do? My glue gun's on there. We got just a lot of fun stuff. The Easy D6 logos and stuff. So it's going to be really fun. But there'll be both a hardback and a softback, which are different covers. So the softback will have the me on it with the group around in a kind of weird glowing green dye, and then the other one will have a monster from the book on this pitch black dark cover in that kind of green glow color. It's called a Merc Strike, and a Merc Strike is this enormous salamander that lives in rivers and like comes up and will jump on the bank and try to swallow you whole. And there's a great picture on it of that coming up to this boat that's like floating up there, and then the Easy D6 logo is kind of banded on the bottom. So both books are just look super sharp and great. And Brandish, I don't know if you're familiar with Brandish Gilhelm of Runehammer. His design skills are impeccable. His index card RPG is amazing. His design and writing in the thing are fantastic. And he brought all that design savvy to this book.
Oh, he's really on the ball.
Yeah, he designed the book. It's like so easy to digest. It's like an easy read, easy to digest. The reading it is just as easy as as the rules themselves. And it's just a joy to look at, because we also had the illustrator we had was Sean Bova, and he does these perfect illustrations for it. They're like, they have this certain amount of whimsy, but there's that certain amount of terribleness to them too. That drama. He's got
Okay, that sounds like
like
fun.
they're really dramatic illustrations. It's not trying to be like a super realistic style or anything. It's like drama. And it's just so stylistically fun and fits perfectly with the material. And a lot of my, I've got kind of the classic monsters in there, and I've got like a bunch of my own monsters. Some of them are actually from quest givers in the North Road campaign. So you've got all the stats for those monsters from the North Road campaign, which I love the book. I've run it with several groups and we've just had a blast with it. So I wanted to put that in there. So that's in there, but I've got also other monsters, and Sean's illustrated a lot of those. So just fantastic stuff. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I can imagine. It sounds like a lot of stuff. Speaking of your original monsters, I think we might be seeing some kid bashes coming up soon then.
Oh yes, definitely. Oh, I wanted to show you, I had a couple things I wanted to show you
Oh,
too.
please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm working on this game
Other game?
where well, it's not a game system, it's an actual tabletop where it'll be using my EZD6, but
Okay.
basically it's like a short campaign, and it's the players are transported to this world. They're transported to a world that's like this desolate world, and they're like, oh crap, how do we get out of here, kind of thing. And then the story progresses from there. But there's like, I've got these trees that I did to show you. They're these white trees.
Okay. Could you move them slightly to your? There you go.
There's that better. Yeah, trying to. Okay, yeah. So like the base is kind of this ruddy brown. It's and the tree is like white gray, and I really love the color differentiation between the ground and the tree. It's like the difference is really cool. It really adds to it. And then when they find the place, there's actually some people living in this sanctuary area on this world that's basically a dead world. So they build kind of these mud huts, and I wanted to show you this. I did. It's like these little huts I made for it, and this is like a coconut from the Dollar Tree.
Right.
And then I added like bits, the door. This is a flower pot thing, and a little chimney. And then I added the little windows and stuff. So these are kind of like their little homes that they live in. They make it out of the mud and stuff there.
Okay.
So yeah, those are a couple pieces from it. But
could you go back to the tree, please? How did you make the trunk of the tree? Because it looks really interesting.
Oh, the tree?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, the tree, I actually going to do a video on this, but the tree is basically paper towels and toilet paper rolled up, soaked in white glue, shaped, and then I put texture on it by texture paste, which is this kind of artist's medium that you can put on canvases to give dimension.
Yeah.
And what I do is I paint it on stuff and like drag. I have like this little fork, actually, like a little cocktail fork, and I drag it through, and it gives that kind of cool texture there.
I see it, yeah. So that's a tiny fork.
Yeah. And then these are just branches from plastic plants that I planted. And I love plastic plants because if you hit something, you're not going to knock it over, right? Because it's flexible. So that's what's great about these kind of plastic branches. If you use those hard ones, you bump it, it's going to go flying.
Yeah.
So, but
the end is saying Sponge Tom lives in there. I think he's talking about your coconut cottage.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a SpongeBob vibe there. But yeah, so like there's this faction there's this faction there that are kind of like they've been stuck in this dimension. Basically, the player's enemy has thrown them into this place to die, essentially, and they have to find the sanctuary area to, and then there's this whole story going on there. But there's another group of people who are the same as them. They're like exiled from other worlds,
Okay.
and they've all kind of banded together to make against these two other groups that are there. And they're like these the two other groups are they're these sisters, and they each have a war band themselves that have been attracted to them, and the sisters have over time have so mutated that they're like not even human anymore. They're just these weird abomination type things, and they can't even speak. Like their followers speak for. They have the voice, like the voice of Sauron or whatever. Like the voice speaks for it, but they can absorb, if you agree, they can absorb you into their fold of their followers and this kind of thing. So they got all these totally, it's kind of like Mad Max in a fantasy setting.
Yeah,
that's
what it sounds like.
Yeah. Where there's there's like the crazies essentially, which they all are, the ones that follow these two sisters. So, and then, a whole story going on under that. It's like essentially it's like a 3-part campaign.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we could jump to Discord to see what everyone else is up to right now.
Yeah.
But before we do that, do you have any? I know it's a difficult question, but do you have any favorites from the crafts that you made in the past, or any? I don't know, any particular RPG moment that sticks to your mind?
Yeah. Let's see what there's so many great moments. My problem is that I haven't had a home game in so long. Like I've been running games online because of COVID and everything. So I gotta think. It's like so. It's hard to choose a favorite, but I had one thing where it was like the players were kind of like in this astral sea, and they were out floating on this creature that could take them across this astral sea, and I had terrain kind of floating around in it. I had it kind of supported up, like you might have asteroids or whatever, that kind of thing. And then I had different enemies on the pieces that they would encounter, and one of them, and the thing they were floating on was actually kind of like this giant, almost like a giant brain. It had, it looked like almost like a giant brain, like a giant black brain. This weird kind of thing that they keep encountering through the campaign. They would encounter it in cryptic ways, and then they actually interacted with it in this, where they got to this point where it was like they were in this astral sea, kind of floating out. This thing came and rescued them. So it became their transport as well as the a living thing, basically like a floating brain essentially. But I had all these eyes on it, and then I had a light inside, so the light was coming out of the eyes. I had all these kind of different doll eyes punched into it, and light was coming out of the eyes. Really neat effect, and then I had kind of a black light going for the astral sea, so everything was everything that's white or that kind of color is catching that black light effect. So just really, that kind of stuff can really add a mood to your table.
Yeah, I can imagine it. I mean,
yeah.
And stuff like the glow in the dark stuff that you mentioned earlier, I think it really and then you turn down the lights, I guess, to I think that can create an atmosphere.
Yeah, you turn down with this, you turn down the lights, and trying to get it put in my forehead there. You turn down the lights, and like these eggs start to glow, So, and even the green that's painted on here is like a glow in the dark.
All right.
So it will glow also. So pretty cool.
That's I don't think I've ever played much. I don't think I've ever played at all with glow in the dark stuff. So that might be something that I will look into.
Yeah, glow in the dark and reacting with like black light.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. You can get like those gooseneck black lights, put them in a gooseneck lamp and shine it down on your table.
All right.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Okay, shall we head over to Discord and see what's going on?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see what we've got. We've got some pieces from Steve's paintbrush.
Nice.
He's into this whole grimdark thing, but I love the details and the textures he puts on stuff.
Oh, definitely. Very cool. Yeah, it's really nice today how much like craft stuff there is that's come out,
Mm-hmm.
and just in the last 5 years. Like contrast paints are fantastic, save you a ton of time. Contrast paints, all these different washes and inks and um, different just access to different minis with printing, 3D printing. It's amazing how it's exploded.
Yeah, I mean, I had taken a very long break from crafting, and I'd only come back in about 2016, 2017, 2018 kind of thing. And I felt like, the kind of caveman gets thawed out from an iceberg, and he suddenly finds all this new technology going on. I love this lighting effect and the pigments too. But it's not just the materials. I mean, it's even the different techniques that are being shared around.
Totally,
For
totally.
example, lighting effects and so on. It's
Yeah,
okay.
lighting effects and music can really add to a game. Yeah, I mean, it's just cool, and the whole idea, and not just crafting techniques, but ways to present it or play it. Like
Yeah.
Professor Dungeon Master's turntable idea is just a fantastic idea. Um, it's just a great idea, and it's just it's opened up to so many fantastic techniques and great
hmm
ideas that it's exploded. It's amazing.
Well, speaking of the UDT and lighting effects, this one's from Sean. I mean, this is a marsh piece he was running in his game yesterday.
I love it.
Yeah, and those trees are really looking good.
Oh yeah, just fantastic.
I think I'd mentioned that those are toilet paper trees over an armature, if I remember correctly. But with
And
this light and everything, they really change appearance.
right. And I love how the terrain and everything can make the game accessible to everybody, because some people are more visual and some people aren't. And so the theater of the mind can be a little tricky for people that are visual, you know, like to see a visual. And the terrain is just fantastic place for everyone to focus, not just the visual people, but just
hmm
everyone, the whole table. And I just love um, that, and it just draws you in. I think it just draws you into the world. Like there's this miniature world that's happening in front of you, and your brain is bringing it to life. You're bringing to life these aren't miniatures. This is Henrik the Bold. Henrik the Bold is going to charge over here to this tree and chop that orc or whatever. You find yourself lost in this stuff. Like it's not just models and miniatures anymore. It's like becomes its own little world that you're like looking at.
Oh yeah, 100%.
It's amazing. It's really amazing. I think everything working together well like lighting, music, terrain, miniatures. When you get that just right and that's working together, people are so lost in that. It's like, yeah, it's just this shared mutual fantasy. It's just I can't. There's no way to describe how great it is. How the feeling, how fun and memorable that is.
100%. But my favorite part is when you get past the point when the players start interacting with each other
Mm-hmm.
rather than just with the game master.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
then you can just sit back and the whole world with the they start making up their own narrative, and again it goes into ways that you would never have expected.
Exactly. That's what's so great about role playing. It's like, whatever great ideas you think of, the players could probably think of something. Will think of something better, and you can just go with it. They'll never know, if they like, oh, I think this is going on. It's like, oh, that's better than what I thought of. I think I'll go with that, and they'll never know that you didn't. They'll think they were geniuses for coming up with it, and then you get the benefit of,
Yeah,
of using
I
what they
had
came
planned it
up
this
with.
way all along. Okay,
So it's fantastic.
we have
Oh, that's fun.
these snails are from Jagelsdorf, from Martin. This is part of our ongoing pistachio challenge. So this is a pistachio shell, and I see that he's sculpted or modified these snail creatures here.
Uh-huh.
I like the flesh color. It looks really creepy.
It does. It does. It's great.
Is that any ear over there on the
Oh,
shell?
I don't know. I can't tell on my screen. It's cool.
Yeah, I really love the paintwork on these.
Yeah, the paint job is excellent.
Okay, Earthman Brick with more of his pistachio stuff.
Oh,
Ooh,
nice.
I think these are Chaos Spawn for Warhammer and Warhammer 40k. Again,
Nice.
he's built them out of pistachio shells and cast bits and other parts.
Cool.
The bloody bits look really bloody. Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Okay, I think that's it for now. But if anyone throws up anything else, you can just give us a poke.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for letting us see.
That's some good stuff in there.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely good stuff.
So, what's up? What's up for you next after Easy Day 6 and the World Book? Are you planning anything else already, or are you just going to push on this for now?
Right, right. Now I'm kind of, the way uh that I've kind of become, they call me the craft father and all that.
Hmm.
Um, I, I've slowed down my videos a lot because there's so many people. There's so many people making great videos, um, and I've I feel like I've gotten most of my stuff out, most of my techniques and all that stuff out. Um, doesn't mean I'm going to stop making videos. I still make videos, but I'm slowed down quite a bit on the videos, and become more of a curator of the community.
Hmm.
We have the Tabletop Crafters Guild, which has a huge number of members, and just fantastic work on there. You should join that if you're not part of it
I'll
and
see if I
you're
can
interested in this
dig up
stuff.
a link.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
a
it's on
fantastic
Facebook, the
place.
Tabletop Crafters Guild. So, but yeah, so at this point, I feel like more of a curator of the community, and I've started doing things. I don't know if you saw the video with Jeremy and Wylock, but I'm going to do more of like interviewing
The
other
interviews, yeah,
crafters.
yeah.
Yeah, because there's so many great crafters, and you get to see conversations with the crafters, but I want to do kind of a rapid fire questions, which I think you get a lot of information in just like the 10 minutes that you watch the video. It's like there's a lot of information in there about that particular person and their approach. So I love that. I love that format. I'm going to do a lot more of those. But yeah, you'll still see crafting videos from me. I've still got stuff coming. I'm never going away unless you all boot me out. You boot me out.
No,
But
we're
now
keeping. Don't
it's
worry,
like,
we're keeping you.
but now it's like, mostly what I do is I've been going to more conventions, and it's going to start hopefully with the, COVID ending, or slowing down, start up more. COVID put brakes on that, but yeah, I try to go to more conventions. I go to this place called Valhalla in the Fall, which is Utah. It's like a week-long gaming retreat, and I run games there, which is really fun because
Nice.
you get to. I run like a short campaign because it's great in like normal games you can see each other at most once a week. Sometimes it's more than that. It's like maybe every once a month or once every couple of weeks, but there it's like days
Boom, boom, boom,
all in a row.
boom.
Play a mini campaign all in a row, which is just amazing for someone like me. And when I went before, I didn't take any terrain and all that stuff because it was like in Utah, so it was I'm in Ohio, so it was a big jaunt for me. So this time I'm driving out, I'm taking like full terrain. It's gonna be amazing. I get to do what I do best. And then I'm gonna do a horror game also, which is I love having people wake up in a situation and they have to figure out how to get out. Basically, it's like an old research facility, and they were drugged and thrown in here, and they got to figure out what the heck's going on. How do I get out of here? And I'm not a killer DM by any stretch of the imagination. If you die, you die. I mean, if you can die, I mean, I'm not saying you can't die, but I'm not one of those people that just murders you, But in horror games, I will murder you. I will kill. You'll be lucky to get out. So this is one of those games which is fun. I ran a game like this last time I went before the plague happened. And it was basically like these people were thrown in a sewer and they couldn't get out of the sewer. And it turns out they find out they're in this contest to survive. And they notice that the water's filling up in the sewer, slowly rising. So they've got to get out of here before the water fills up and drowns them.
So it's something like what's that? What's that movie where they get some random people and have them have a death match for the entertainment of some super rich people or something like that?
Right. Essentially, that's what it is. Yeah. So there's like all these traps in there, like these horrible fiendish traps. But not only that, there's like this massive guy in there, like a Schwarzenegger type, with like this high-tech wetsuit, right? So he's going around like murdering, hey little piggies, daddy's coming, little piggies, like, so he's going around like murdering these people, trying to kill these people. And it's a blast. It's fun. Usually, one or two people make it out alive if they're lucky. I've had everybody die, but usually one or two people, make it out by tripping the person behind them, and then but
I have a question
it's
about.
a lot of fun, and I'm a nice DM, but on those horror murder games, I'm not nice.
You just take the opportunity to let her hair down.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question about it. How do you keep up the tension in that kind of game?
Oh, the tension, yeah. It's the unknown factor, right? So I like to play with terrain, and so I'll lay out the terrain. It's only what they see. You don't lay out the whole thing. You don't lay out the whole board. It's like you only lay out the tiles. With the sewer, I had different sewer pieces that I could put together, and that kind of thing. And then things that they want to check out that seemed like they could help them. and maybe it's a trap. You know what I'm saying?
So you make it so that they can never actually trust anything, or
Right. Oh, you gotta explore because you want their stuff. Like there are always stuff that you can get to help you, right?
yeah. And if you don't explore, you're
But
stuck
then
in
there's
place.
always the danger it's a trap, right? It's not stuff. It's a deadly trap.
All right.
Like I had one, in the sewer one, there's this one place they break into, and it's like this long hall that goes down, and there is a cage that comes up, and it pushes you up to the ceiling and traps you in the cage. So you're kind of like in a you're like in a cage type casket pushed up against the ceiling.
Ooh.
So you don't have that much movement, right? You're kind of in this small space. So, and then the players are trying to figure out, the other players, if they're with you, trying to figure out, okay, how do we get this person free? And then at the end of the tunnel, you see these lights come on, and you hear this rattling noise, and it gets closer and closer. And as it gets closer, you notice there's a track on top of the ceiling, and then this cart like comes, it's like attached to the ceiling, coming at the person that's been pulled up in the cage, and has like spikes coming out. So it's just going to impale the person if you don't get them out. If you don't get them out in time or whatever. So just brutal, deadly traps like that.
Yeah, I mean,
and all the time it's filling up with water, right?
oof,
So
yeah,
first it's your ankles, and it's your knees. Now it's your waist. So it's like, and you're having a harder time moving, and there's this guy in there in a wetsuit. The big murderer in the wetsuit. He's got harpoon guns. He's got high tech weapons. You got nothing. So
yeah. At least,
except whatever you can scrounge.
at least there aren't alligators in there, yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No alligator. I didn't have any. I didn't have any alligators, but that would have been then nobody would have got out.
Okay, Dungeon Matron says, Scotty, do your monster scream. It's nerve-wracking.
she's one of my players in my bi-weekly game. We have a lot of fun, but yeah, she calls me #evil DM.
Yeah, after hearing the trap story, I wonder why. But no.
I'm not too evil. I haven't killed her yet or anything. So.
Is that
I've tried. Not that I haven't tried, but
is that something?
But I like to mess with the players. Is what she means.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. You got to have your fun.
I like to psych you out and mess with you. Play mind games on you.
Do you do apart from the scream? Do you do voices when you're DMing or not? How do you do that usually?
Yeah, I'm not great at voices. I'm like, I can do the squeaky goblin, or I can do whatever, the ogre, but I'm not like one that's like I can change my voice to the French accent, or the or if I'm feminine, I'll feminize my voice a little bit, maybe but it's like yeah, I'm not fantastic at the different voices, but I give it a shot.
Apart from actually learning to change your voices, do you have any tips for portraying different characters?
For playing different characters, yeah.
I mean, to make it clear that now I'm just talking about like this person, now I'm talking as this other person.
Right. I like to think about their motivation, like what the character's motivation is, and like their personality. Are they sincere? Do they seem shifty? Maybe they seem shifty and they've not. That's always the fun kind of to play. They just I like playing I play characters like a character that like seems like he's lying, but he's not. Like it's the player's like, all this stuff keeps happening, and like they don't believe this character, but the character's not lying. Like he's not lying at all. But basically, like the bad, someone on the bad side was like setting them up, and making it all look like he never has like witnesses for what happened. Like he says, "Oh, this happened," and they're like, "Well, where's?" They're like, "Well, no one saw, but
Yeah,
because what I had was a shape changer
okay.
who
Oh,
was
those are always
changing
fun.
into him and like telling them how they were suckers, they would fall for everything he did, and then they'd come back and he'd be like, "What are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about." It's like, how long can I string the players along on that kind of
Oh man.
deception?
Yeah, I mean, shape changers are always a lot of fun to put
Yeah.
into a story because
It's like, and he'd be like, "I can't believe you believed that I didn't know what was going on." He would mess with him every time. He'd be like, "You guys are such suckers."
yeah, I
And
mean,
he'd like just berate them. The shape changer would just berate them, and they'd be like, "God damn it!" And like they'd get back into the character, and be like, "What? What? You know what you did?" I was like, "I don't know. I don't know what's happened. What?" It's like, nobody. Well, it's like he'd be like knocked out and taken somewhere. It's like, well, they kidnapped me or whatever, and it's like, yeah, right, sure. Every time we run into you, how come you're missing? How come nobody has seen you? Well, like, he always had an excuse, but like, so it's like, how long can I string the players along with this poor guy? And he's like this kind of like slacker loser type character
oh, okay.
anyway. So like they befriended his aunt who was always trying to help him, but he was just this, he could never decide what to do, and he's just kind of a slacker, and he's, and she loves him because he's related to her, but yeah, he's a problem child essentially. So it's like, so he's got that, and then like, but he's not really guilty. He's just a victim.
Okay, Dungeon Matron says Scotty loves putting the player characters in moral dilemmas. And Earthman Big says moral quandaries are the best.
Yeah, that's how my crafting. I talked about selling crafts earlier, in the 90s and stuff when I was on eBay, and the the war game aspect is fun, but that's a hack and slash thing, right? That's where you're just going to it. It's the fun is the battle, right? That's all about the battle. But when you're playing a role-playing game, you want that moral aspect to it, right? You want the moral choices, the moral ambiguity, okay? Like that just makes it so much more interesting than if it's just battle after battle, right? You want to have a reason for the battles. You want to have a reason to fight. And give them that. Give the players that reason to fight, whether it's, their player is their family's been wronged and their player is going for vengeance. You can complicate that. Add. Maybe there's more to it than that. Maybe there's more to it than maybe his parents weren't so nice. Maybe his parents abused these other people, and they find that so you can add all that. That's what's so great about role playing and adding this kind of moral quandaries of stuff. It becomes much more interesting why you're fighting, what you're doing, than if it's just, okay, encounter A, encounter B, encounter C with, okay, there's a little bit of story here. You're raiding this goblin mine, you want to get some treasure. Okay, that's cool. But you could play a board game and do that, right? There's like a million board games now that you could just get and just play out battles with a board game. You don't without even a DM, you don't even need one. But if you're going to play an RPG, make it an RPG. Make it about those moral quandaries. Make it about the characters. Make it interesting. Not always straightforward. Not always black and white. So yeah, I love doing that to the players.
Yeah, one thing I sometimes found was that You throw something into the at the party, and you've got a split opinion. They will spend
Yeah.
so much time arguing between themselves. It's
Right.
it was always fascinating to watch because people get really into it once they get into character. Okay, my character would think this way, so it's like, and they get really into it.
Right.
They get really passionate about it.
Right. And we could go all day about DMing or GMing.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But as you get better at it, you can get the table moving. You can direct the table easier. You can, what I'm saying?
Mhm.
You just get better at everything. You get better. It's like any skill, when I started doing the crafts and I got a group together, I was rusty. It took some time for me to build up and really get my skills, up and working again. As far as like, because there's so much going on, because you've got the rules are like a small part of it, right? So, whatever rules you play, it doesn't really matter. But you've got to have at least a command of those rules. So, you got the rules going. You got to think about where the story's going. You got to think about how the session is going. Is everybody getting their spotlight? Is all this, there's like a million things going on in your head. So it takes some time to get good at game mastering.
Yeah, especially like you said, it's a lot of plates up in the air.
Yeah. And everybody has certain skills that they're better at and others that they're not. Like I'm not a Matt Mercer with voices, right? I can't do all these millions of voices. But he's a voice actor. I'm not. I can do the squeaky growl voice or the rough voice or the kind of feminine voice, but and the male voice. That's about it. I'm not, accents and all this stuff. I'm not great with all that. So but you can make that up by other. You don't have to be great at that.
There are many different ways to tell a story.
Yeah, there are many different ways to misdirect the players, and besides voices, use all your tools. Use all your tools.
All right. Okay, so Jagelsdorf, I don't know if this came up as a topic yet, but do you guys do horror? Yeah, I think DM Scotty was just talking about a horror game he was running. And Earthman Brick is saying making the villains sympathetic works wonders. Anything that can cause the party to question amongst themselves helps deepen the experience.
Yes. Oh, totally. Yeah. Like, because players will murder hobo, right?
Hmm?
And I don't make it that easy. Like, if someone wants to murder hobo, I make them feel guilty for it. You know what I'm saying? Like the players begging for the NPCs begging for their life. They're like, I got a family, please don't hurt me. And they will feel horrible. Like if my players murder somebody, they will feel horrible for it.
Yeah,
they don't get off that easy. I actually had a game where that happened, and they felt so bad about it that when they had a chance to go back and change one thing, that's what they went back and changed.
Okay, it must have been
that they didn't murder this poor guy.
Must have been profoundly, I don't know, big for them, I guess.
Yeah. So that that touched them. Yeah, play on that. Play on people's emotions, because when something's just a statistic, it's easy to beat it up and kill it. But if something's begging for their life, or I got a family, or whatever, they're telling you about themselves, please don't kill me, or begging you, please don't kill me. That's like, that becomes, then you're the bad guy. You know what I'm saying? Then wait a minute, I'm the bad guy now. What am I doing? So I love playing on that. I love playing on the moral aspect of the characters, and if you're an evil character, you're not going to care, but for most part, most characters care. They don't want to be villains. They don't want to be just murder hobos. But in other games, they don't even think about it. They just do it. They just go around murdering everybody. And it's like, you know,
I think that's more of the the board game or the video game mentality that you were talking about earlier. It's like, I mean, if someone comes to a game that and they've only known Diablo or Hero Quest or whatever, it's always boom, 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 attack something. It tends to give that kind of experience.
right, exactly. And that's what's so different from about role playing than any of these other games, because you don't care if you kill whoever in one of those other games.
No,
It's
actually,
like,
you,
it's
you,
just
you
a
do care
statistic.
because you get points. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a stat. It doesn't make any difference. But when someone's begging for their life, that's a little different.
Yeah.
And you're lording over them, and they have no way to fight you. That's a little different. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Now, if
absolutely.
someone's wronged you, if someone tried to kill you and then they're begging for their life, that's a different. That might be a little different. But someone who doesn't done anything to you, and just, you know, oh, you question him, now you got to murder him because he knows you or something. That's when
Yeah.
you start getting into that moral stuff. It's like, then the players are like, oh shit, wait a minute. Let's hold off on that. What are we doing? Are we the bad guys? So, yeah.
I
And
like
that's what role
the
playing's about. That's what role playing's about.
I like the everyone is the hero of their own story kind of thing too. So you might get to a point where you're chasing the bad guy, and at some point you think to yourself, actually, this person does have a point.
Yeah, and making villains sympathetic in the chat, it's like, that is so true, because like, most villains have a reason for what they're doing. It's not just, I'm some villains are like, some villains is just the easiest. Okay, I want to end the world. That's it. There's no moral quandaries. There's no, nuance to it. It's just, I'm evil and I end the world, right? But that's not the way most villains are. It's like, they've got a reason. They're damaged goods. A lot of them are damaged goods, and they're getting revenge, or they're, if the world works the way I want, you know, then people won't have to suffer this way. They'll have to suffer other ways because you're an evil tyrant. But but they logic that out. They log those villains. It all makes sense to them. If society is totally rigid and nobody has any freedom, then nobody will be treated wrongly, unfairly or whatever. Because they get murdered, because they get dragged out to the chopping block if they treat anybody bad. It's like, so it's like they've got their warped logic, but it's some way the world should work, and usually they've been wronged in some way, and they're going to make it right. Those are the really interesting villains. Those are the fun, interesting villains that people can relate to. Because even if you don't agree with theirs, you can kind of see where they're coming from. In their damaged way.
I mean, just I think sometimes writing the story, preparing the story, even a framework of a story is as much of a game in its own right. Okay, it's a solo game, but there's so much to play around there.
Right. So yeah, I love the role playing aspect of games, and in my convention games, what I do is I give people secret missions.
Oh, all right.
So like, maybe you're a traitor. Like I ran a vampire hunter game this last convention I went to, and it was like someone was a relation to Renfield, a distant relation to Renfield, and was helping Dracula in the story. It was going to reveal it at the end. And then the other players get, like secrets they know. Like one player was like a relation to Mina Harker and had like her locket, and so Dracula kind of freezes for, around as he like sees the locket, so yeah, like cool stuff like that. You can reveal the locket, and just cool secrets like the players know. And like I had one player know that there was a traitor in the group, but they don't know who it is.
Oh.
So like, that someone is a traitor, but you don't know who, that kind of thing. So those are just really, really fun. I've even had traitors like turn the tail on being traitor, like pretend to be the traitor and then like turn around and like not be a traitor, which is just really fun, just really great. So,
Well,
because I like that. I like that player choice, because then you're not locked into something, right? You're not, oh, you got to be the traitor. You know what I'm saying? Most people like to be the traitor in a one shot. It's fun, where they, I betray you now, this happens, suckers. There are a lot of people that like that, but there are some that don't. So some people will actually do that. They'll like pretend they're the traitor and then turn tails on the bad guy and help the rest of the party. So
it's
I
more like
love that.
so it's more like a character queue rather than than an objective, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, that's a
Yeah.
oh,
It's
that's
just like it's usually what the character knows. Some secret knowledge that they know. You know.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, guys, they're
And
saying,
it's really fun.
yeah, guys, damn, now I'm going to try and implement it in my next game.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. It's super fun. You should. Yeah, having secret character knowledge is just is really great. And it's just really fun when it's revealed and that kind of thing. So
Yeah,
yeah.
just builds up more layers and over what we're over your main story. So Lawrence Davis just dropped in some more of his own alien eggs.
Oh, I love those.
Oh, they
I
look
love those.
gooey.
That's right up my alley. I love slime and goo.
Yeah, I like how it hit these veins over them as well. I think that's some kind of
Yeah, that's a great effect. I
paper
love
coating, I think.
the modeling on the eggs. That's fantastic. The dots and the speckles and the different coloring. Yeah, so great. So great. And that glowing green goo. It's just
Yeah, that looks good.
after my own heart. After my own heart.
Ah,
That
that
drip,
looks
so great.
lovely
So
shading.
great.
That's a lot of alien eggs. I think
Nice.
those stormtroopers are going to be in trouble soon.
Yeah, something came out of those eggs, right?
Yeah, possibly.
And I have a feeling they're going to face it very soon. Foreshadowing is great in games too. Like they find someone's like, oh crap. Horror movies do it all the time, where you find a mutilated body, or there's a noise, or some weird sound you've never heard before.
Okay, I've
Yeah.
always found foreshadowing difficult to do, especially, I mean, something like, I don't know, a boot or a body part or something lying around is fairly obvious, but building foreshadowing in the longer term is much more complicated.
It is. Yeah. You really gotta plan on doing that. You don't have to plan the exact moments,
hmm
because what I generally do, well, I mean, you kind of do, but I mean, ahead of time is what I mean. So like when I do a campaign, I see what happens in the game previous. I have a kind of a general idea, like a general outline, or okay, these events are going to happen at these particular times. But then depending on what the players do, that might change the next game. The next game you're going to do, that might totally change something. So yeah, you're always shifting. I'm always shifting how the game goes because of the players. They're right. Although I have events that are going to happen, how they happen and where they happen and that kind of thing is definitely influenced by the players, what they decide.
So again, keeping the rough outline and then moving things about as you need.
Right. Yeah. Don't think of your story as just like a movie, like it's set in stone, start to finish. You can have like, it starts here, here's where I'm thinking it's going to end, and it could just be all over. That line is not going to go between the two. It's going to go all over. And whatever the players focus on, that's what you should
That's
be
where the game
focusing
goes.
on.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where the game goes. Exactly.
So campaign
Because
today say, sorry.
that gives the players their volition and their
Okay, Campaign Terrain is saying Palpatine is evil, but his empire prima facie isn't. Most Imperial citizens or soldiers aren't even aware of the evil parts. Grey areas are good. And Earthman Brick is saying ticking clocks too can help raise tension, and most people act more impulsively. Yeah, do you actually limit time per turn or something like that, or is it something that you don't do?
Do what? I'm sorry, say again.
Sorry, I said, do you limit player time per turn? Like, for example, okay, it's your turn, you have 1 minute to do something, go.
Oh, right, right. I generally don't. Yeah, I don't like, okay, here's a timer, go, I don't do that. But there are kind of tricks you can do to keep keep things moving. You know what I'm saying? There are some times where it will just get bogged down. You just kind of have to let it get bogged down, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. As long as the players are having fun. If they're not having fun, you got to move it along, get it going. If they're enjoying this conversation, then let them do it. Let them take the time they need to do it. But if you see like people tuning out, or it's just, maybe it's a couple people and the rest of the people aren't interested, then you need to move it along. Have something happen. Have somebody come in, have whatever happen. I mean, you're essentially God, right? Have whatever happen to get the game moving. Whatever trick you need to do to keep the game moving. And some games will be that'll be built, it'll be baked in, like, oh, this bomb is going to go off, and today, if we don't get to it and stop it, or whatever horrible catastrophe is going to happen. They're on a time limit, right? They're not going to want to fart around, but if they're in a situation where give them a little bit of time, sure, give them a little bit of time to play. But that's a big part of game mastering, is kind of learning when to let things just kind of go, let them roll, let them just roll on their own, and then when to pick it up, when to grab it and take the narrative, and like, here we go, this is happening right now. Okay, the egg falls, sky falls on your head. Go.
Yeah, Earthman Brick is saying the best way to roll things forward is to say everybody roll for perception.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, that's a great tool. There are a lot of tools, but that's a good one to get players moving. So yeah, just have something happen, have someone show up, or hear a noise, or whatever. It could be a million things to get the table moving. But yeah, some groups will be worse than others. Some groups just like to debilitate, they like to discuss, and the game doesn't move forward. It's like, you gotta push, you gotta be more pushy. Others, a more reasonable amount of time.
At the same time, I guess some groups, especially groups that have been playing together for a long time, actually enjoy that part of, even if the story isn't moving forward, they actually enjoy the arguing with each other.
Yeah, and if you see that, let that go, and that's part of learning how to be a good game master, like knowing when to step in and when to not. Let it, if the conversation is interesting and they're, let them go. Let them go until you feel you need to move it along, or it still starts to wane. But yeah, you get a lot of interesting, like, character interaction. If some interesting character interaction is going or something, yeah, let that play out. Let that go. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of skills to learn as a game master.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm still learning. I'm still learning. I'm at the point where I'm very happy with my skills as a game master right now. And I wasn't when I first started doing the crafting and stuff. I hadn't done it in so many years, and kind of things had changed a bit, from early D&D to more modern type thinking of games. That I hadn't really updated my thinking enough. And then what kind of was an epiphany for me was the game system Dungeon World.
I don't think I'm familiar with it.
It's run by the Apocalypse system, and why it's called the Apocalypse system because there was a game called Apocalypse World, which it's based on. So basically, how Dungeon World works is it's there's mid ranges of roles. There's not on off. There's not success failure. There's total success, partial success, and failure, right? So as the game master, you have to think of the partial successes. So like, and that's really tricky to do. That really takes a lot to do. Also, the game master doesn't make any rolls. Like,
So
they
it's
don't
all
roll
player
anything.
facing.
It's all the
Yeah.
players. It's all the player
Okay.
rolls.
Yeah.
So the dungeon world is that kind of blew my mind because it was like just another way to think about kind of the mid results of like combats and how things would happen. Like, you get something and the enemy gets something, which for me can be kind of hard to keep thinking of mid results because those are mostly what you're going to roll, right? It's hard to think of those mid results, but it also makes you better at doing on and off results too, because you can kind of have more variation in the failures and the successes. It gets you thinking more broadly like that, in that terms of successes, like on and off, success, failure, more nuanced kind of stuff. It helps your description of like events in the game, and it just it's a very interesting system. It's not, although I say all that, it's not one of my favorite systems. I respect it and I like how it changed my thinking, but it's not one that I generally like to run. But it's but yeah, that kind of thinking about mid results, I think can help with any game master, because someone might just barely hit something, or they just barely miss, or all that kind of thinking of that more of a range than on off,
Yeah. I mean, most of the
helps your
systems.
description of like what's happening in the game.
Most of the systems I'm familiar with are yes, no, on, off, like you said. It's
Yeah. It's more nuanced. You get more nuanced thinking, and then that more nuanced thinking helps with every aspect of the game, actually. And that was kind of like that was kind of a mind blower for me, because I read the game and I'm like, I do not get this game. I don't understand this. And then I had to read it again, and I'm like, okay, now I'm getting it. All right. Because to me it was like, what, the game master doesn't roll? What? And the cipher system is kind of the same way. It's a bit like Dungeon World. I really like the cipher system, but I love the cipher system as a game master. I don't like it as much as a player,
all right.
because there's so many. With the player, there are so many situational things that happen. If A, B, and C happens, then D happens, which is really hard. When you get a bunch of those, it's really hard to have those all in your brain at the same time. Do
Okay,
you know
I
what I'm
got you.
saying?
Yeah.
And you have to keep referencing your character sheet a lot, which when I talked about easy D6, that I don't want to do that. I don't want you to ever have to rarely ever look at your character sheet. Like, when you make an easy D6 character, you will rarely ever have to look at your sheet. You know what I'm saying? You'll never have to look for numbers. Once you get your inclinations and you know them, which are 2, 3, or 4 inclinations, that's it. And you'll know your aspects. That's easy. So you won't ever have to reference numbers on your sheet. You don't have to keep looking at your sheet to reference stuff. And I feel like with Cipher System, you do. But like with Cipher System as GMing, I love it. Like, I love GMing Cipher System. It's so fantastic. It is definitely a GM's game. And but yeah, but as a player character, I don't I don't like it. It's like, what was that number? What when it's Tuesday and it's dark, you know, after 3 o'clock, I can do this. You know, that's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, but
You
then you haven't had breakfast, so it's the other table, and
right. So it's like you
yeah.
got to keep looking over stuff. Yeah. So I don't. Either I'm just too dumb and I can't remember it, but you know, if you play every couple of weeks, you know, you don't necessarily remember all that stuff, right?
Hmm.
You know, if you play every week, maybe you do, but if you play once a month, you know, which most adults can't play too much. So if you play once a week, once a month, or once every two weeks, it's like remembering that stuff, all that little nuance stuff can be really hard. Like that whole list of nuance stuff can be hard, and you have to keep going back over it. And it's like, and if you forget something, it's like, damn it, I forgot that would have been, you know, because any bonus you get in the game is like you want to use, right?
Yeah,
You
of
want to use
course.
your bonus or your skill or whatever. And if you forget it, it's like, darn it, I could have, you know. So in that aspect, yeah. But in general, I mean, Monty Cook is a legend, and it's a brilliant system. Yeah. So
Okay, so I believe we're going to have to wrap up for today very soon.
yeah. Yep. Yep.
So, is there anything else that you'd like to talk about or throw out before we close off the stream?
Sure. Make sure to sub your channel, please. if you're coming here and you've seen me, sub Karl, please. I try to go to every crafting channel and sub, because I love that you guys are doing this, out there, you're putting yourself out there. You're making ideas to make someone's life fun and creative, and every one of you, you know, Karl, and needs to be appreciated for that. And I think you should all be subbed, because this is just, I just love this community. It's such a wonderful community. You know, I don't think we have the same problems as some of the other communities where, like, you know, if you know, you've heard some of my opinions on rules and game systems and all this stuff. But you know, play what you want. I don't care. Whatever you have fun with, play with that. If that's your game and you love the minutia of the game, play it. I don't. Just because I don't doesn't mean that you don't. So I have nothing against any rule system. I want, just go play something, you know. But you know, with the crafting, the point I'm getting to is the crafting, we don't really have that, because it's really, there's nothing to argue about, right? There's no rules to argue about, right? It's just like, oh, they approached it a certain way, I approached it a certain way. Both ways are equally valid, right? It's just
you could get
how you
arguments
want to do
about
it.
who has, you know, this is the best way of making toilet paper trees, and no, this is the best way of making toilet paper trees. No,
Right.
but
Yeah, and we
joking
don't.
apart, anytime anyone has a question like, hey, how do I do this? You always get like 60, 70 people here, more information,
Exactly.
more
Yeah. Like at
information.
the tabletop crafters guild, you'll get 10 different ways someone tells you to do something, and every one of them is valid.
Oh yeah.
That's what's great. Like, you know, if you're in a country that doesn't have access to foam, use cardboard. You know, use your cereal boxes. Use what you have. Use rocks from your yard, pebbles from your yard. Use whatever you have. Paper. You know, use whatever you have access to make your stuff. It doesn't have to be out of foam. You know, like most of the stuff I make is, I don't even use foam that much. You know, I use it a lot for rocks and that kind of thing. But for buildings and all that kind of stuff, I usually use cardboard, cardstock, wood, you know, coffee stirrers and craft sticks. You know, I don't usually use foam. I don't break my foam machines out that much. I use it a lot for rocks. I do. But for other stuff, it's mostly what's the easiest, and the easiest
Yeah.
is cardboard, cardstock, hot glue, and then really, you know, people say, "Oh, that looks like junk," and then you paint it. It's like, wow, that looks amazing, you know, because it's all, you know, you'll have this thing cobbled together with all these different colors and pieces and junk, and people are like, what the heck is that? And then you'll paint it, and it's like, wow, like it's just a transformation. That's the transformation stage, is the painting. When you get to that painting stage, And even when you base paint it one color,
Yeah, that's what I was
you
going
can
to say.
kind
Yeah.
of see what is okay. It doesn't have the colors on it, but now it's not just a hodgepodge of junk, right? It's like looks like something. It actually looks like something. So that's the magic stage for me, the painting. But I just love the craft community. There's so many great people, so many people sharing wonderful ideas. Like I say, it's with we're not, for the most part, we're not argumentative about stuff that, like, rules and that kind of stuff that other communities would argue about. I'm going to die on my horse for this, or I'm going to die on my horse for that. It's like, there's no craft I'm going to die on my horse for. if you have access to foam and all you like using is foam, and you have a foam cutter, do it. That's what you should do. If you don't have access to a foam cutter and you got some cardboard and you got some paper towel rolls and you got cereal boxes, use that. You know what I'm saying? Hot glue, use that. You don't have to use one or the other. And that's what I love about this. And that's what's so great about, having all these crafters do projects isn't redundant, because this crafter is going to do it a different way than this crafter. There's rarely any two crafters that do it exactly the same way.
That's one of the reasons I love the guild build.
Yeah. The guild build. It's just, I love seeing the creative ways that people use junk. And I love too that a lot of this junk is going to be thrown away, is going to be in trash.
Oh yeah.
And now you've made it into art. Essentially, it's art. You're making art, and you've made it into useful art. Like, I'm not saying art's not useful, but if you made it into something that you can use in your game, and it may get used multiple times and many times throughout your years in your career of gaming, or maybe you just want to make it as a diorama to put on your bookshelf and look at. That's great too. So there's room for everybody here, is what I'm saying. Whether you're a gamer or whether you like to just do dioramas, anybody's welcome. And I love that. And for the most part, that's why I don't think we have the same problems as some of the other communities, because what's to argue about? Right? It's like, oh, I don't agree with the way you're being creative and I'm being creative. You know what I'm saying? It's like, what? No, your way is just as valid as my way, So, and generally overall, that's why we don't have a problem. We don't have a problem in this community, because nobody's going to die on their sword for this or that, cardboard or foam.
It's not the kind of thing that creates drama. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I love that. I love being part of this, and I hope it's enriched my life, and I just hope that it has enriched other people's lives too.
Oh yeah, I speak for myself. Absolutely, it's great to be able to do stuff with your hands and things. So yeah, I'm loving it.
Isn't it?
Yep.
It's, yeah, I love it. I love it. You're in the zone. I'm making something, not thinking about anything else. I'm in the zone. And this thing is being created in front of my eyes. I'm making it. And like I said earlier, we're not taught to make stuff. There are artists that go to, they might go to school or learn it themselves, but that's a small group of people. But most people aren't ever taught to make things, aren't ever taught to make your own stuff. And I love that this gives you an excuse to do that, because everybody has a creative side. Everybody has something to contribute. Whether your skills are there or not doesn't matter. And I'm telling you, if you think, oh, this stuff doesn't look that good, it doesn't look like so-and-so, or it doesn't look like so-and-so, it doesn't matter. Because when you put that on the table, your players are gonna be like, whoa, what the heck? We went from thinking about what this looked like to you have it on the table, what that actually looks like. It's like players are just blown away by that. Every player will love that. So yeah, don't ever knock yourself on your skills. It's just like anything, you'll get better. It's just like game mastering. The more you do it, the better you'll get. It's just anything you want to do. The more you do it, the better you get. And if you're not, if you just don't think your stuff is up to snuff, put it in front of the players, and you'll be surprised. Because going from nothing, looking at nothing, to having something on the table and miniatures and actually like a little world there in front of them, yeah, it's a whole different experience. It really is. So, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I think that's it's funny that you mentioned this gives you an excuse to do something, which is true, because I don't think I'd have started crafting anything if I didn't have that excuse, like you said. So that's 100%.
Right, because not everybody wants to do like scrapbooks or flower crafting or whatever, which there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. But it's fun. It's fun for us because not only are you doing something fun, you get to use that. You're using what you make in games. A lot of people are, not everyone, but a lot of people are. And even if you're just making a diorama, you get to show people your diorama. It's like, wow, look at this. Here's this book I made. And it's just, yeah, there's so many things attached to it. It's the pride of you doing it, the joy, the sheer joy of just sitting there and just shutting your brain off to everything in the world and just concentrating on being creative. There's just so many great things about it, just the stress relief of that. And then making stuff I'm a big show off. I love to show my stuff, showing the stuff to your table, and they're like, wow, that's so cool, or they're so immersed in what you made and absorbed into the game, and all that's just like patting you on the back. Because everybody likes to feel validated, and appreciated. So there's just, I could go on and on of why this hobby is so fantastic. So, but you guys watching know, you know why it's so fantastic. So, and keep doing it. Keep doing it.
Oh,
and
100%.
Karl, keep making videos. Just keep doing it.
Thank you, sir. Okay, I think we're going to have to call it an evening now. DM Scotty, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a real pleasure. It's been a blast talking to you.
Oh, so glad to be here, and thank you everybody for joining us. I always like to blabber on, so.
No, then perfect. Have to keep listening to you talk, because this really has been fun. So thank you so much.
Oh, no problem, Karl.
And thanks everyone for tuning in.
Take care, everybody. Bye now.
Bye-bye.